injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Fish on First Live here, presented by Berger and Hicks as usual. Unofficially 3/4 of the way through the Miami Marlins season. Believe it or not, 41 games to go in here. If they have to win out at this point to make the postseason, but most likely will fall short of that, which is why we dedicate a whole lot of time on these streams to the future. And the timing of this is impeccable for us to focus quite again on the Marlins' top prospect. I am Eli Sussman, of course. Kevin Barral to my side, Isaac Kazoot to his side, and our two special guests, Aram Layden of Just Baseball. You know all about him. He's been on here plenty of times before. And anybody on Marlins Twitter, if you don't already follow Savento as well, he is all about this type of stuff, all layers of the Marlins organization. Appreciate his insight as well heading into this Mets series. But as I already alluded to, talking quite a bit about the future of this organization, coinciding with Just Baseball dropping their updated top 15 Marlins prospects list. I did want to start off with a guy, technically prospect eligible, not on the list, but he did pitch in both the previous series for the Marlins against the Phillies, and he is going to pitch on Sunday. I will be in attendance on Sunday for Valente Belloso Day. Very excited for that. I wanted to start off with Savento because you had your eye on him even before he debuted for the Marlins. I have to be honest, I was not very optimistic about what he was going to provide after being an average-ish pitcher in the upper minors and given just the limitations of his pure stuff. And yet, 5 starts into this, it's a 2.28 ERA. In his most recent outing, 7 scoreless against the Phillies in Philadelphia. Just give us a quick breakdown about how you think he's doing it so far and, like, realistically where you think the Belloso experience is going, because he's probably going to be in this rotation for the rest of the season at least.
Yeah, to be frank, this is probably he's probably shooting a bit above his clip, right? It feels like a guy who's probably going to regress at any point soon. It's kind of like a ticking time bomb, but we're going to enjoy the ride until that happens. There seems like there could. So I said before, he kind of seems like what. I'm blanking on the guy that we sent to Baltimore for in the Tanner Scott trade, but it's just this kind of like control.
I remember because
guy.
you tweeted about it.
Doesn't throw hard.
Yeah, but you mentioned the comp to Antonio Velez.
Antonio Velez. Yeah, because I was a big Antonio Velez guy. Just good control, like ability to find the weak part of the bat. And this is kind of what I was like hoping Velez had to turn out to be. So it's low velocity, but good pitchability. And we've seen Braxton Garrett find success like that. So, I mean, who's to say he can't continue to at least be a serviceable MLB pitcher, but he's not going to be a 3 ERA guy like Brax has kind of proven to be. But it's a fun ride so far.
And I guess it's safe to assume, Arm, reading through your list, not in the top 15, not mentioned among the next 11 names to know, as you also included on here, a little bit outside of that. But I'm sure he has exceeded your expectations a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty awesome that he could fill in and give them even 2 quality starts, more than that to this point, right? I mean, they got him for Jacob Amaya. So, I mean, in that respect alone, like it's nice. If you go back and look at the batted balls from that Phillies game, I think there was like 4 in a row hit 350 plus feet. I think a Rosen Stott fly out at like 393 feet. He's definitely had some fortunate, batted ball outcomes, but at the same time, as Sevento said, like the cutter, he's been putting it exactly where you need to put it to just miss the barrel and get outs. And like if he helps them get through this year, literally they traded a guy who got DFA'd otherwise. Like it doesn't really matter, but I don't think you're counting on this guy to be a part of the future. Anyway, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he just keeps getting outs, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up too. It's just he's a fly ball pitcher that I think does get hit pretty hard. Has gotten hit pretty hard in the minor leagues. Even the EVs, like so far in the big leagues, have been pretty high. But let's ride the wave. I mean, I hope he keeps rolling.
Yeah. So this is
Belozo and Verlander, two elite pitchers.
Yes, lowest ground ball rate, minimum 20 innings this season. So he's in the first percentile because this is out of like 400 something pitchers. It would be an unusual combination. Verlander is one of the only guys I look back on where it's not only in terms of being so dependent on fly balls, but also Verlander kind of had the skill through the years of inducing a lot of pop-ups, and that's what Beozo was doing a lot. When they're not going 350 feet, he actually is keeping a lot of them in the infield. I just don't think that there's really a skill there. I think depending on how – it just depends how far underneath hitters get under those balls. But I think, eventually it'll even out. But hopefully just one more start at least that he keeps it going and takes advantage of this opportunity that he has right here. Yeah, other than that, kind of going to move on from that series. A series split against the Phillies, who themselves had been slumping quite a bit coming out of the break. So I think it says quite a bit about the Phillies themselves, as well as how the Marlins are playing, that it split the way that it did. Is there anything, Isaac or Kevin, about that series that you think is worth noting outside of Beozo?
Jake Berger keeps hitting, man. There's just another way to say it. He had another home run in that first game. I think he had 2 hits in that second game. So it's really about it. And then Edward just, I think our intern Nate said it's so infuriating to watch that guy sometimes because he has these 3 good starts. You could even say 2 of those were career type starts for him, like really good. Then you have this one in Philly where it's just, you throw more balls and strikes, struggle. So tough game for Edward, or tough start. But he'll get another shot, I think, against Arizona now. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the more frustrating ones to watch because the stuff was there, and then you just see it blow up how it has in so many of his starts previous, where it's just like it's almost like a recurring film to watch him pitch his starts. It just blows up like that in the fourth when he's getting almost every single batter is working a full count against him with ease, and it's very frustrating to watch. And I was the biggest advocate for this man to stick in the rotation, but I think after this season, if these struggles continue, which there's no reason to think they won't, you got to try something different. Unfortunately, I think they've paid their dues with this player.
I think from there, we want to just hop into this Just Baseball top 15 list that came out today on justbaseball.com. And I guess really quickly, a big picture view from you, Aram, just because across the industry, there have been updated farm system rankings. Pipeline had the Marlins 15th, Baseball America, and I think Baseball America, Fangraphs all had them on ESPN, all of them between 15 and 20. You seem to be a little bit higher on them. Is that right?
Yeah, I think because of the fact that I'm a little bit higher, I think on some of the pieces that they bought low on, I've always been, I think, a higher guy on Dylan Head. Pretty much most of the Padres prospects I've been higher on. So, Robbie Snelling's still a guy that I think is gotten kind of docked a little bit too much now, where I think it's almost been a little extreme, seeing him go from, arguably one of the best left-handed pitching prospects in baseball. And then now he's a 45 future value guy. Like, I think he's somewhere in between that, right? Even if it's closer to the latter. So that's a guy I love. And then Jared Serna, I just think is another guy that I'm higher on than maybe some of the other outlets. So that kind of bolsters things as well. But I think it's close to top 10 at this point. I think at least in the top 12. But that also is because I think Thomas White's one of the better left-handed pitching prospects in baseball now all of a sudden. And, you look at the depth now that they have all of a sudden, they never really had that. The emergence of Joe Mack, who looks like he can actually serve a big league role. Javier Sanoja looking like he can fill a big league role. Like, those aren't guys that you build the franchise around, but we're talking about a farm system that barely had any bats that could fill reasonably any big league roles at all. And now some of their breakout guys are like the 6th or 7th most intriguing bats or valuable bats in the system. think that kind of shows you how far they've come.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me are I think all 15 of these guys are in our top 20. Eli, is that correct? So, yeah,
That's right. That's how I summed it up in our chat when there was originally some overreactions. I said, guys, there's a lot of similar names right here, just the order of them being slightly different. Yeah.
Right. So because obviously we know how you feel about Davison De Los Santos. I think that's fair. Your concerns are very fair. But to have Connor Norby 7 spots behind him, that was interesting to me. What happened in this last 3-4 months where he was, I think he was number 6 or 7 in your Baltimore preseason list, and he falls to number 14 in Miami's obviously much worse system.
Yeah, I think 2022 was a really impressive season from him, where I think you saw a more advanced hitter than the levels he was at, really put up some impressive numbers, put up above average contact rates. And then as he started to get more acclimated, or not even acclimated, as he started to spend more time in the upper levels, you started to see the contact rates trend towards fringy. He's a guy that's going to outslug the exit velocities, meaning that he backspins the ball to all fields, which is great. But those types of players like the Isaac Paredes of the world that, need to elevate consistently and are going to outslug what the exit velocities may imply, have to have superb swing decisions and have to have above average contact rates. His contact rates are fringy. His exit velocities are fringy. He's not a good defender at second base. He's probably fringy there too. There's not really one above average tool that you have here. And, the approach is all right. I think the more that I've been able to see of him, the more I've been able to kind of gather that I just don't think that this is a big league regular. I think he's probably more of a lefty masher, platoon type. I think there's a reason why he's been moved around a lot. I think there's also a reason why the Orioles, a team that notoriously does not want to trade any of their key prospects, no matter what, were willing to move him along with another player for Trevor Rogers. So I talked to scouts about him too. When you look at the tools across the board here, he's going to have to really hit to be a regular. And I mean, a contact rate of 72%, I just don't really see where this all fits in. And then the glove being iffy doesn't really help either.
Right. Fair enough. At least we're in agreement with Dylan Head at 4. Was there any?
Well, wait. We're in
agreement
agreement with Dylan Head.
Right.
No, tee off, cut loose. I feel you holding some stuff in, Isaac. Let me know what was the bat like? What's the crazy stuff to you?
No, that was it. I think the Norby. I think you're a little bit harsh on Connor Norby. I do agree that I guess I've been watching a lot of Jumbo Shrimp games, unfortunately, and he is striking out more than I would have liked. The hit tool wasn't as impressive as I thought it was when he was coming over. I think 14 is a little bit harsh. I would probably say that he's, if not the best position player prospect in here, he's probably the second or third best at very worst.
In the system?
In the Marlins system? Yeah, I think he's much better than Victor Mesa Jr. I think he's got way more offensive impact than Mesa Jr. I think I don't think you can put Carter Johnson ahead of him yet either. But I see where you're coming from as well. It's an interesting take. I don't know how good he is defensively at third or second, where he'd be better. The fact that he can play middle of the field and fake it, is it that bad?
He can't play third, I don't think. The arm's too short. So if it's an average second base, and
it's an average second base, okay,
at best, if it's an average second base at best, he's gonna what does it look like as an everyday player if you're Connor Norby, right? He's gonna strike out clearly. He's not gonna hit 30 homers. He might not hit 20 at the big league level. So Victor Mesa Jr. is a plus defender in center field, or at least close to it.
Barely plus. I don't know what the calculation is with Victor Mesa.
I mean, the Marlins think he's plus in center too. So even if it's not plus, if it's well above average,
right.
Well above average defensive center fielder, even if the bat's a little iffier, you got a fourth outfielder there and a guy that's filling that role versus a defensively limited second baseman who has to slug because he's not going to hit for a ton of average,
right?
Not going to walk. I don't know. It's just I'm not, and he's 24. Mesa's not even 23 yet. So I think if you look at Mesa's numbers before playing a month with a back issue, they were pretty solid. I think they're pretty
They
solid.
were
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of slumps, a lot of hot streaks.
Oh, there's no
Very-
in between with him, that's for sure.
very streaky player with Victor Mesa. He's a very fun player, very confident player, and I got to give him to him. I think the baseball IQ is really there as well. But yeah, no, that's an interesting one. Norby's not exactly the offensive minded second baseman that I thought he was he was going to be, unfortunately. But I still think for Trevor Rogers, I don't think Stowers is going to be this bad. But I think Miami did well in that trade, but maybe people got a little bit too excited when the Orioles aren't stupid.
That's true. No, I think we skipped ahead of what I wanted. We'll get into that in a moment about who just missed your top 15. What I wanted to start off with that we skipped past is having Thomas White number 1, which is something that we agree with, and based on where you have him future value wise, really like a tier above everybody else in this system, right?
Yeah, he's in his own echelon, in my opinion, at this stage. I mean, you're talking about a lefty that's 95 up to 98, 99, good characteristics. The feel for the changeup is amazing as well. I think that was a pitch that was kind of underrated, even still as an amateur. But then now he can spin it too. Breaking ball looks really solid. So you're talking about 2+ pitches. Breaking ball has a chance to be plus. It's at least above average. And the command, like, it's not bad at all for a 6'5" lefty that's a teenager, right? And so when you're looking at it from that lens too, he has number 2 upside, maybe even a little bit more than that if he gains another tick. And it just seems like what you're looking at right now just screams middle rotation. I don't want to say at the very least, because of course so much can happen, but just the quality of stuff, the pitchability, the way that it works off of itself too. I mean, the changeup just is so hard to pick up out of his hand from that arm action as well. 60+% strike rate across all 3 pitches already. He's just so advanced for his age with more projection as well. I mean, I'm really excited about him. I expect him to be one of the best left-handed pitching prospects in baseball by the end of this year.
Do you see a world where someone like Thomas White finishes the year at Double A? I mean, he's cruising by Beloit right now, and
I would love to see it. I don't know why not, unless they wanted to taper down his innings and just do it next year. But I don't see why he shouldn't get a couple outings out there. I think it's pretty clear that he's quite comfortable in high A, and it almost looks like sometimes he's just throwing bullpens. He looks so comfortable.
Yeah, and then
sorry, go ahead.
Go for it.
I'll say so he said the Marlins internally graded his sweeper as like a 72, and he's trying to get that up to an 80. Does that pass the eye test? I mean, is it that good of a pitch when you've seen him throw it?
I mean, it's been dominating this year, and like that's one that, like, we were just talking about it on the show, like on the call up, that with a bit more consistent of a feel for it, like I could see that being his 3rd+ pitch. And if that's the case, my goodness, like he's got 3 legitimately plus pitches. Yeah, it's at like 81. Opponents are hitting like 125 against it this year. So, I mean, everything I've seen so far looks like that could easily be another plus pitch for him. And if that's the case, then he's got a trio there. That's pretty absurd.
Yeah, and then right below him, you put Agustin Ramirez, who as your top position player. We had Norby, but I think when we were doing our list, there was definitely a conversation of putting Ramirez as that top guy. Just a very safe profile. He has the power, but you seem pretty certain that he's going to stick at catcher at the major league level. What makes you think that? This is a guy who, I think before even coming to the Marlins, he had allowed 91 stolen bases already this season. The blocking it's pretty rough.
Yep.
It's very rough behind the plate. I know he's just 22, but it's definitely room for improvement, but it's been pretty bad.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been great. Pretty much every single scout I've spoken to feels quite confident that he can stick back there. Between the fact that he's 22, the fact that it hasn't really been that much of a fundamental focus for him until about this year. And then now, really, really leaning into the fundamentals. What I look at is what I see now as a guy that's more technical over natural, and it almost becomes too technical. And that's why he's like kind of late to slide blocking sometimes. If you look at the receiving, it's like almost mechanical, which you got to be more fluid. So he's a player that earns really high marks for his makeup, his work ethic, and the way he goes about his business. And a 22-year-old that's swinging it the way he's swinging it in the upper levels. Now he's able to, that's brutal. Now he's able to focus on that. And I also think it's worth noting, like, he's joining an organization here and he's catching arms that he has not seen before. So like, he doesn't know the depth of those pitches. He doesn't know exactly what that's going to look like. And he's not totally comfortable with that. But I think when you look at the skill set there, like the hands are strong enough to be a decent receiver. I really do think it's a fundamental aspect that you're talking about a guy that has some of the, I think, better work ethic for his age. And now he goes into this offseason. Honestly, that wasn't that bad of a throw. He goes into this offseason knowing that it's in his control, basically. He can basically get himself to the point where if his defense is passable, it's his job. And the Marlins know that too. I know they're quite optimistic that with his work ethic and with the skill set that he has, that they can get him right. But again, like this is a guy that has fully been focusing on the bat the last couple of years. The Yankees have prioritized Austin Wells. They prioritized even a Ben Rice in the development there because those guys were closer to being able to help them. So this is a guy that's kind of just been forgotten to a degree, but also still to the degree that they added him to the 40-man roster before the season, the Yankees did, because they were concerned that other teams may snag him. I don't think you're adding a guy to the 40-man roster just off the bat alone like that at the lower levels. I think the Yankees also believe that glove can come along. And, you'd be surprised for some reason the receiving actually grades out in terms of balls and strikes a little bit better metrically than you'd think.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, the Marlins recently have had pretty good defensive catchers with Banfield. You have Joe Mack, who's been improving. So it's been better. So, that's kind of why I do feel like, there's hope that he'll stick at least there for a bit. But I mean, the videos have not looked really good whatsoever. But
so to give some context here, this video is from one game that I was watching live. Game. And this is one of his worst games. It's not, you don't always notice it's not hurting the team every game, but man, so just to replay this, it's three different balls that
is that also the game where they struck out like 19 times as a team?
I think so. It was just last week.
I know guys were having trouble seeing that game.
Right.
So I mean, again, I'm not trying to give them a bunch of excuses here, but that game in particular, I think the Marlins struck out 19 times.
Yeah.
Or the Jumbo Shrimp did, and clearly he was not seeing the ball very well either. Right. I don't know what the deal is there. And I was looking at some of the splits there, like people K there a lot for whatever reason. The thing though is with the bat, like we're talking about some of the better EVs you're going to see, especially from a 22-year-old. 90th percentile exit velocity of 108. I mean, that's tied basically with Davis and De Los Santos for the highest in the organization. Difference is he doesn't chase 40% of the time, and he actually makes above average contact. A slight change to the swing path, and I think this guy's unlocking 30-plus homers. Against four-seam fastballs this year, he's hitting 391, 476, 816. That's a 1292 OPS and 103 plate appearances against four-seam fastballs because he's able to elevate those pitches more consistently. His path is not conducive to doing so against secondary stuff. So that's where it's been a little bit more difficult for him. But if he's able to find that, and find a little bit more consistency there, the contact rates are fine against secondary stuff. So I think if that comes along, he's going to be in a really good spot offensively. And if the glove's a 40, which that seems to be from everywhere I've gathered, scouts seem to have a 4 on it across the board, or at least where it'll be at the very least. I think if you can just clean up some of those fundamentals, you got a power hitting bat first catcher. And I mean, the Marlins have not had anybody this productive. He'd be one of the more productive hitters, just even if he wasn't catching.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, they haven't had an offensive first catcher, and God, what feels like a very, very, very long time. Even as a prospect.
They had Jorge Alfaro, but he just didn't have the offense
exactly. With Ramirez, just the offensive profile is so alluring to me. Like, oh my God, I'm just very excited for this bat. It's one of the safer offensive-minded players that they've had come up in the system in a very long time. So I am very excited. When they made this trade for Jazz, a very high-ranking Marlin official sent me a compilation of his defensive lowlights with the Yankees, and man, it was rough. They weren't very high on him. I'm somewhere in the middle between you and Eli, Aram. I think the only reason I don't think they're going to let this slide for so long is because, I mean, the Marlins are going to be prioritizing pitching. And so I don't know. If you're saying the receiving is working well, then maybe, but it looks pretty rough. I agree. The bat is just going to carry him and let him continue to hit and put him at catcher. I think he's going to clear 69 games. I think that was the number you put on Twitter, Eli. I think he'll catch at least 55 games next year at the big league level, I hope. But
there's some really important context here too. This guy was in rookie ball in 2022. Rookie ball. 2023, like he climbed 3 levels and trying to survive those levels offensively. So he climbed up he went from rookie ball in 2022, where he played the entire season. In 2023, he starts the year in low A, plays 56 games there, and then climbs his way up to double A. So at that point, he's also just trying to survive offensively and build offensively. This is really his second season in above the complex. That's also, I think, important context on the defensive side. The fact that he's hitting in double A and now starting to get his footing in triple A as a guy that's in his second season above the complex, I just think that the glove with the work ethic and the things that he can have going for him, I think it'll come along.
Yeah, that'd be one of the more exciting catches they've had in a very long time. I just, like you said, 40 grade, you take that every single day and you run.
It'd definitely be the most exciting. Arma, I wanted to ask you about De Los Santos. There's a lot to like. Obviously, the EVs are great, the power's there, but I noticed it yesterday for sure. He chases at everything, and it feels like, even when he does chase, he's trying to hit it out of the park, which some guys do, but it's not always great. Just what have you seen from him? I know we've talked about it personally, off record, just how much he does chase and how much he does kind of struggle at the plate at times.
Yeah, I mean, he's been as advertised, right? You see the power, you see everything he brings to the table in terms of the impact. This guy's going to drive in like 120 runs this year or something. It's wild, but I also, you got to look at what the D-backs are doing here, right? That he's unprotected in the Rule 5, and then they get him back, and then he could not have had a statistically better season than he has had. And even posted good splits on the road, despite playing in one of the more hitter-friendly environments in all of minor league baseball in Reno. And they still were willing to move him and another prospect for AJ Puck. I think that has to tell you a little bit about how concerned they are about it translating to the big league level. Of course, still looked at it in a vacuum, that part aside. It's just going to be hard for this to translate at this stage. What works for him and works in his favor is the fact that he has an incredible season already under his belt as a 21-year-old, really age 20 season in the upper levels where he has just absolutely mashed. And so there's not a lot of precedent on guys putting up these numbers at 20 years old in the upper levels either. But I mean, we're talking about contact rates that are well below average. You just can't survive with a chase rate of 40% unless you are a savant bat to ball wise, especially with the chase rates against secondary stuff being north of 45%. He puts the ball on the ground a little bit more than you like to see. He gets away with it because anything that's in the air is gone. That's very clear. His home run to fly ball rate's been sustainably great, so I think that helps him get away with it. It's going to be a first baseman, so playing first, can put a little bit more pressure on the bat. He actually does look comfortable at first. So for me, he was a hard player to place because of what we've seen him do, what he's capable of doing. And also, if he does rein in that chase all of a sudden, even get it to 30%, I think we'll see a pretty significant difference. But some guys, a lot of guys, when it's that high, it's pretty difficult to cut that down. So I'm just concerned that it might not ever really be trimmed. And he's going to be that volatile type of bat. That's why I mentioned Franmil Reyes in the write-up. He could have a season where he hits 37 bombs, but, it can also get away from you very quickly. There's a lot of Jake Berger type, it's that same cloth. So there's going to be times where it's awesome. There's going to be times where it's really frustrating. And at the end of the day, it's still probably not going to be much more than 1.5 to WAR at the best, just because you're not getting much value elsewhere and he's not walking.
Yeah. Last 8 games, he has struck out 18 times in 8 games. So the honeymoon is slowly wearing off with Jacksonville. We have a whole lot more to get to on this stuff. But first, as usual, during these series preview shows, we have a flipped fish, choosing a player usually retired who spent part of their careers with both the Marlins and the opposing team during their major league careers, Marlins and Mets in this case. This is the most difficult one I have come up with all year. 10 out of 10 difficulty wise, but based on these hints, you're going to try to figure out who it is. One kind of major hints. It's a lefty pitcher who played from 1975 to 1993. So that end date helps you narrow it down a little bit because they did play for the Marlins and yet they retired in 93. So that leaves you a pretty small window to choose from. There are the overall numbers, pitched nearly 700 games, mainly as a reliever. Not expecting anybody to get this one, but it was just put on my radar recently, and I thought it was really clever and really fitting. So think it over during our break. We'll come back on the other side with the reveal.
I know who it is.
No, you don't. Shut up.
Yes, I do.
we have a whole lot more on Aram's great list, and we'll do a tiny bit about the Mets as well. So stick with us here on FOF Live.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Never mind. I was wrong.
10 out of 10. Not Ryan Weathers, as
No,
somebody-
David Weathers.
David Weathers, excuse me. Yeah, not David Weathers, although I can kind of see where you got that from. It's not Charlie Huff, although he was an original Marlin as well.
Left-handed.
Yeah, like the years kind of make sense, but this was a lefty. Yeah, somebody that I had no idea played for either the Marlins or the Mets. So that's how you get a 10 out of 10. That's how you get it as difficult as possible.
Who is it?
Yeah, I wish Alex Carver was here for us because this was his era. Or I guess he was watching a little bit of baseball in 1993, and he might know.
Your guy dirty.
Yeah, the answer is Bob McClure.
Who?
I was watching, I can't even remember what team's broadcast I was watching that they mentioned he came up because when he used to play for the Brewers, he was known for having a really great pickoff move in like the late 70s and the early 80s. So that is how it came up. He only pitched 14 games each for the Mets and the Marlins, including in 1993. So he's part of that really long list of guys that have a long career and they finish it out once they're totally washed up with the Marlins, and the Marlins are the final chapter of their career. So he was, one of the few guys, one of the many guys, I should say, that have followed that same timeline right there. We are continuing our conversation about Arm's updated rankings of these Marlins top 15 prospects. Yeah. And anything else from the rest of you guys that jumps out here that you want us to dive into that we haven't already touched?
How did Nathan Martin get squeezed off, bro? What the hell?
Right?
Why honorable mention?
Yeah, you got an honorable mention.
He did.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I value like the defensive side of things a lot because, you especially when you look at the borderline guys, like I'm looking at what kind of role do they fill. And that's part of the reason why Norby is lower for us. Is like, yeah, I can see what happens if it all works out and he just continues to just outperform every underlying metric because he will just keep hitting, let's say, and that's a regular. But the fallback for him is kind of very immediately part-time player that has to hit to be productive. Whereas I look at like a Marcy, he's another player where cut from the same cloth of Mesa Jr., even if he's not hitting, there's a big league role where he's quite valuable, right? Like he's a plus defender in center field. He's one of the best base stealers in the minor leagues, 40 bags back-to-back years. I was really impressed with what I saw in the Arizona Fall League. I've been very surprised to see him struggle this much this year. But the plate discipline being what it is as well, like if this guy's a 230 hitter, which I think he is better than, he's going to walk enough to get on base at a reasonable clip and then play good defense, give you value on the base paths, and be, a solid fourth outfielder. So I just feel like the floor is high there. There's still some hope that he can get some things going offensively and get closer to where he was in his breakout year last year. Whereas Martorella, like that guy's really got to hit, and he just hasn't really hit that much this year. So a lot more pressure on the stick for him, I think.
No.
Arm,
Go ahead.
Jared Cern at 5. In between Dylan Head and Robbie Snelling, kind of with how you like Head, that seems to indicate he's kind of like border top 100 maybe.
Yeah.
First time at Double-A raking, like comes to the Marlins, hasn't even played above High A, and now he's at Double-A and he's raking. This means that you kind of buy what you're seeing there.
I'm glad you brought him up. He was by far the most enjoyable video dive and just like data dive. And I watched every single ball he fielded this year too, because I was just so interested to see how the defense has come along. He worked hard on his footwork. He worked hard to add strength. This dude played 180 baseball games last year. I think maybe even more because he played the full season of minor league ball, and then he went to the winter league and played like another 60. So he almost played 200 baseball games last year, working his butt off on not only the footwork, but also adding some strength. Like, he's not big, obviously. He's 5'7", but he gets every single ounce of his frame, utilized into his swing. And the fact that he can do that while also still making a ton of contact. Basically, last year with the Yankees, he played more second base than shortstop. He proved to them in spring that he had come along enough to play shortstop, every day, or at least a majority of his games. This year, he did that. They were really impressed. They liked what they saw from him defensively. Then the Marlins bring him over, and I know that the Marlins have already been impressed enough. Some little things like posture-wise and throwing from different angles that he can improve, but I think it's clear that he looks like he can be an average defender at short. Then you look at the batted ball data. I don't know if I've ever seen a hitter with a max exit velocity below 110 who has an average exit velocity of 91 miles an hour. Like, the fact that he has an average exit velocity that high, I mean, that would be the top 30% Major League Baseball, top 40%, if I'm not mistaken. Like, the fact that he's doing that shows you how consistently he's barreling baseballs. 41% hard hit rate for a guy who's 5'7". He's another guy that's going to outslug the exit velocities, except his exit velocities are actually better than Connor Norby's by several ticks. And like, that paired with the plate discipline, paired with the ability to elevate, like, he has totally changed his outlook now to a guy that I think could be a doubles machine. He is 36 this year. He's going to sneak in 10 to 15 home runs. Now he can potentially stick it short. And I also think he has all the ingredients to be a fan favorite. I think he's going to be like the fan favorite when he gets up. Not that that's baked into the ranking, but just another aspect. I think people are going to love him. I just think he's their best option moving forward at shortstop. I think Xavier Edwards has been incredible. I think he still projects best at second. I think Jared Serna's their shortstop moving forward at this point, unless somebody else emerges or they acquire somebody else. I think he's their option. I think the Marlins also feel the same way.
Makes for a fun middle infield for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the two guys that they got the two pitchers they got in that Scott trade, Snelling and Mazur. Mazur we saw a little bit more of yesterday. Snelling, I think, goes tomorrow for Pensacola. Snelling's been a fun watch. He was one of their top guys. He was, I think, their top pitching prospect. What do you like so much about Snelling? I know you put out a tweet about him recently as well after his two starts there. I'm very high on him. 20-year-old in Double A. I know the 6 ERA certainly scares off a little bit of people, but it's 20 years old in Double A. He's one of the youngest players in that league, and he goes to a pitcher-friendly league now in the Southern League. But still, I mean, you're still going to put up numbers no matter what, and you still have to move up in levels, and that's what he's doing through two starts and hopefully another one tomorrow.
No, I mean, he probably overperformed a little bit last year, and he's definitely underperforming this year, and I think he's somewhere in the middle, right? So, like, for him, some unique things coming into this year. His release point changed. I don't know if that was intentional or not. If it wasn't intentional, the Padres are one of the worst organizations to get you right if you inadvertently got off of your track. I think that's been abundantly clear, and the Marlins capitalized on that with Ryan Weathers and got him right, and he looks like a totally different pitcher than he did for the last couple of years in San Diego. But beyond that, I mean, he really struggled with locating the fastball, I think, and that really set the tone, and falling behind in counts, and then not being able to kind of utilize the two secondaries that I think have actually been pretty solid. The breaking ball also, I think, because of the different release point, wasn't quite performing the same way that it had last year, but his changeup has come along so much, and now he's leaning on that more. And I think now he's also kind of found a better feel for the fastball again. This is a guy that has to be that plus command guy to be the arm that he can be. But I think you're looking at average fastball and two above average secondaries, pitchability guy that fills up the zone. That's a high probability back end starter for me. He was a 4-star recruit that had offers from like every SEC school to play linebacker. So I do think there's still more velocity in there. We had him on the call up, and I love the way he goes about his business. I love his mentality. He's got that football player mentality. He's definitely a bulldog on the mound. I just think he's a guy that's just too talented physically and too strong mentally to not figure it out and be a solid back end arm. Maybe he's not going to be the number 2 that we thought he could be after seeing what we saw last year. But I think with some slight adjustments, especially to the release point, kind of getting back to where he needs to be, still think there's a shot that he can be a middle rotation arm. But I think he's a very, very high probability, high floor back into the rotation arm that, especially with the development of that changeup.
Let's touch on some guys that just missed the list because you put 11 names to watch right here, including somebody that's pretty hot lately, who frankly, I wouldn't have in my own names to watch section, but he's been performing. He's been streaky. It's a little bit divisive because
He's
we're trying to,
back.
yeah, we're trying to make sense of how all of a sudden now he's been hitting pretty well over extended stretch. But where are we at with Jacob Berry and like realistically what his big league role looks like if he does get up there in the first place?
Yeah, realistically, I probably prefer like Andrew Pintar over him. It was just you got to put the first round guy who has been swinging it over the last couple months. What's weird is I've noticed that a lot of players over the last 30 days or so in the Southern League all of a sudden are hitting a lot better right around the time that the second half kicked in. And it hasn't been reported a ton about, like, last year we had clear cut, publicly knowledgeable barriers of when they were using what baseball and all that stuff. I mean, look at the numbers, and I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. Just look at the numbers in the Southern League and tell me they're not messing with stuff there. Look at the home run to fly ball rate. So yeah, maybe the ball's flying a little bit better now. I think getting him off at third base was huge. He needed to just not be playing third anymore. I think that was weighing on him. He's making a lot of contact. And you can't fully ignore that. I mean, I think it's like 89% in zone contact, over the last 30 plus games. The power's still not very prevalent, but he's flashed it. He crushed one like 440 pull side. Like he's just starting to look a little bit like a hitter again. And, at the end of the day, he's still young. He's still time on his side. I don't know what it would look like at the big league level because he's kind of positionless and he's going to need to slug more if he's going to play pretty regularly. But it's been nice to see him kind of cut down the chase a little bit, make a ton of contact, and the results have been there. So you can't fully swear off a first round pick, as he starts to perform well in a league that's been the least hitter friendly in professional baseball. But I'm also not holding my breath. But I'd be remiss to just fully ignore it. I feel like I can't do that.
I'm curious, if you did a redraft of his draft, where would he go? Where would he fall?
Oh boy.
Oh man.
I think that's a fair question to ask because it's not like
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, realistically, he ain't going round one, I'll tell you that. Probably the third round. Maybe the fourth.
Holy shit.
Probably the fourth.
That's
fair
fine.
enough. And then I know we already touched on him pretty extensively, but Dylan Head's draft, where he went 25th overall, where does he go? Redraft today.
It's unfortunate because he hasn't really had the opportunity to show anything. But at the same time, I think people have already seen enough to where you can see why the Padres, also one of the best drafting teams in baseball over the last several years, were very excited to add him. I still think the reason why that question is tough is because you're going to have some of those second, third round, fourth round college pitchers, pop-up guys that are balling out that are going to be taken ahead of him because he hasn't had the opportunity to do the same. So realistically, probably the second round. But it's so fluid that I think if you ask me that, in the middle of next season, there's a chance that the answer could be middle of the first round with how much talent he has and the plus glove in center field. But he hasn't really had a chance to prove that, he should have been taken earlier. But I don't think he's shown anything that says he should have been taken later, other than the fact that there's going to be some random players that were drafted in the third, fourth, fifth round in that class that just are insane, that look like steals that are going to probably get the edge.
Right. You don't think the surgery he underwent, because his 80 grade speed is going to be affected at least a little bit.
Maybe. I think the fact that he's so young and you hope that it's just it's just one of those bumps in the road for a young player. I think it was clearly affecting him this year. I saw him tinkering with so many different loads, trying to get into that backside, just really struggling to get into his hip. It could be something, and we'll have to just kind of wait and see. But I still think he's going to be the same speed guy. I'm more concerned how much can he get into that lower half when he's hitting, and it is that back hip. So That's what I'm a little bit more concerned about. I still think he's going to be an absolute burner. I mean, he's 19, so like his body's going to recover a lot better, I think, than most players who are going to undergo a surgery like that.
I guess the last one for me, real quick, is on our list we had put Carter Johnson over PJ Morlando there. What made you go PJ in this case over Carter? Who PJ definitely the draft combine certainly seems like it helped. Seems like that was the big factor in his stock kind of rising up. At least for the Marlins it was, and then two guys not being there for them. But Carter Johnson seemed like he could have even gone in that first round in that 16th pick for the Marlins. He ends up going over slot to
Wild.
in that second round.
Sorry, I just saw that comment.
Wild.
The only place Mel needs to go is to the Hall of Fame. I think, like,
Literally. That's wild.
So Morlando, like, at the end of the day, like he got $3.4 million, and Carter Johnson got significantly less. What, 2.4? Is that what 2.8? Okay, so not significantly less, but good chunk less. Like, at the end of the day, teams, I think, were it was late, but there was a late push from Orlando that made him, I think, a little bit higher regarded of a prospect. I could see it going any which way. The difference, though, is Carter Johnson's going to have to hit too. He's going to move off a short, most likely. I think he probably moves to third. I know the Marlins are very excited about getting him into a weight program, Carter Johnson, and seeing how much strength he can add, because there's a lot of room for projection on the frame. I know the numbers aren't good in low A. It's a very aggressive assignment, and I've actually been really impressed with the way he's handled his at-bats so far. He looks pretty comfortable for a kid that's 18 and just got thrown out there. The 45 future value is just because we don't have much to work off of now, and that's a balance of the floor and the ceiling. Obviously, the ceiling is a player that can be an above-average regular, offer above-average hit, maybe even above-average power, at least average, at third base and play a good third base. But he's just so far off. The future value, like, grades are kind of based on prospect value. If they were to be traded, it would be based on that. Like, that's what I think teams would value him at this stage. Morlando just, I think, has a little bit more upside, since both are going to have to rake. Morlando has, plus power potential, at least in the raw department for sure. Even in his one at bat that we saw, he cranked a foul ball like 106. I mean, he's got some juice, man. He's got some crazy bat speed. He's made some adjustments to be a little bit more adjustable in the box and a little bit more athletic. This guy can absolutely pulverize baseballs and has a pretty good feel for the barrel. I think that got better as the spring progressed. Like, yes, it was a weird pick. Yes, I probably would have went a different direction, but also there was plenty of teams that were targeting, as far as I was able to find out, plenty of teams that were targeting Morlando late in the first to do an underslot type of thing as well, because of the show that he put on, in that combine, and because of just the power and the swing that he brings to the table here. The fact that he's turning in above average run times is interesting. Like, they're going to give him every opportunity in center. I don't think that's going to happen. They'll move him to a corner, and I think he can be fine in a corner. But I think the combination here of at least average hit and then well above average power, like, I kind of see a Kerry Carpenter type of profile here that you can dream on, which, again, there's a lot of pressure on the bat there, but I think that the mobility in his lower half is hard to find, and that bat speed is quite impressive. There's just a lot of upside there offensively when both of these guys are going to have to hit anyways.
Would you 2023 Carpenter would be nice?
Go ahead. Right? In Carpenter, like, that was a guy that was bat first, and if you look at the way he moves in the box, it's very unique, very predicated on hip mobility. Also had a lumbar spine issue, coincidentally. But, I think that's also because of the style of hitters that they are. It kind of demands more of your body. But, I am excited to see what Morlando can do offensively.
Would you have preferred Cam Smith?
Yes.
Had he been available? He's struggling with small.
But I also love Cam Smith.
You love Cam Smith?
I got him in the top 100. So I of course, would prefer Cam Smith by a lot. But
I wasn't obsessed. I would have preferred him. I wasn't obsessed with him during the draft, but yeah, I can see why he's a stud. Orlando was just such an outside the box pick for me at the time. It was crazy. The people I spoke to, like, wow, shocked.
Yeah, when he was there, everyone was pretty.
You saw my reaction.
Yeah, we saw it. It was great. It was phenomenal.
I wasn't ready for that one at all.
Orlando!
Yeah, that one.
Thank you to Kevin for sending me that at the last moment.
Yeah, the only reason is because we were talking about it, and they were joking about the Barry pick, and like there was a live stream there. That reaction was even worse, I think. And we're like, no way. Now it's different front office. They'll go about it differently. Like
They went about it the same way.
Yeah, and so I just wasn't ready. And the pick had come in. And so a couple of our guys on the production side were like, don't say anything. Don't tell Arm. Don't look. And so they like built it up. So I had no idea. So it really built up for me, and it delivered. But I still think that, he can be a fun bat, and just gonna be you got to be patient with a guy like him. And
I mean,
I wanted to go upside, and it honestly worked out with the way that the deadline shook out, with them going with higher, like upper level minor leaguers. And that wasn't the initial approach. It's nice to be able to get 2 high school bats here and have more irons in the fire. So, I don't hate the way that it worked out for them. And I do think Orlando has some big time offensive upside. Everyone said who when the Rays took Xavier Isaac, and he was an overweight, out of shape first baseman who had a foot issue. And, you see what he's done here. There's always going to be a stigma with those first base prospects, and for good reason, because if he doesn't hit, he's quickly going to be, not much of a prospect, but it helps now that he's a little bit more athletic. He can play a corner potentially. And, there's always some value to be found there because teams are always so against, going that route.
Yeah. And I guess the last one really quickly is, I guess when you were making this list, were there any guys that kind of stood out to you that maybe you just didn't know too much about that, and now you're kind of going to monitor a little more that, could at some point make your list?
Serna for sure. I just have been floored with what he's doing. Joe Mack's defense really was impressive to me. Like I didn't realize how good the defense was. The receiving, especially at the top of the zone, the arm is ridiculous. I think he's thrown out 38% of base stealers this year. Like Joe, even if he's a 30 hit tool guy, the fact that Joe Mack's now showing that he's got above average power with that glove, I mean, it could be a solid backup catcher. Could be a guy that ends up holding up and could hit his way into being a regular. And I know like the Marlins haven't totally ruled that out, and they think he could be a potential regular. Javier Sanoja as well. Like I know that he's been doing it all year and he's been just continuously hitting, but just like the more I dug in, the more I realized like this guy's such a high probability big leaguer.
Yeah.
I mean, overall contact rate of 91% is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. 83% out of zone contact rate is comical. You're not striking that guy out. And then I think about the role though, right? What if he's just hitting nothing else, what is it going to be? That's what I thought he might be. But then the more I dug into it, this guy actually plays a good center field. It's at least, average there. It could be a little bit better. Plays a great second base. Shortstop, but he can play there in a pinch. That's fine. You can kind of pick up right where John Birdie left off. And if he does that, like that's a really solid big league piece there. So I just like the role that he has a high probability of filling. He crosses that threshold of like minimum impact that you need to see. 85 mile per hour average exit velocity would put him outside of the bottom 10, which is all you need when you're that much of a contact savant. And hey, he can kind of sneak some balls out to the pull side. So
absolutely,
I've been really impressed with him as well. And it's been fun to, kind of see him break out in the system. And then probably Kiner Benitez.
Yeah.
Lefty, filling it up in the low 90s. Good feel for a changeup already. Like I was really impressed with what he's been able to do already as well.
Is it fair to be cautiously optimistic that at this time next year we could be seeing Xavier Edwards, Jared Serna, and Sanoja, all those 3 guys in the lineup? That's a little bit exciting, right?
That's the shortest the lineup in Major League Baseball, I think.
Hey,
that's electric. That was like that
reloads.
That's that contact and defense approach that like we heard about with the previous regime, and then it just didn't really happen. But the cool thing is Bendix is targeting high-end exit velocity guys as well. So like you have that influx of high-end EV guys, but to be able to balance that, like Davison Dos Santos and even Augustine at points are going to probably be frustrating offensively. Like when they're hot, they're hot. When they're not, they're not. Berger, you see it as well. Like to be able to hedge that with guys that go about their business really well, like run, extremely impressive contact rates, grind out ABs. Like That could be a fun and balanced lineup that,
I agree.
all of a sudden now they have depth too. Like, God forbid somebody gets hurt. Now you can plug a Sanoha out there just like you could with Birdie ended up being a full-time player because the team was so freaking bad. But like in a situation where Birdie's playing a couple times a week, but oh no, somebody gets hurt. Okay, Birdie's a regular now. That's great. You can fill in and stay afloat. Like that's nice to have those pieces. And I think the Marlins have quite a few of those. But I'm expecting Carter Johnson to leap next year. I'm expecting a couple of these other guys to potentially leap. And I don't know what Victor Mesa Jr. ever did to Isaac, but I hope you guys work it out. Okay.
Isaac even chose Victor Mesa Jr. in the call-up contest, like in the second last round. You chose VMJ.
Oh, I chose him?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just because it was probably a smart pick. I was told by someone with the Marlins that he would have been up a couple weeks ago had he not gotten hurt. So that's fair. Anyone that calls himself the chosen one is just not going to have my love. I'm sorry. I can't get behind that. I don't like that sort of thing. And two, it's just very minimal impact.
It is funny. It is funny to call yourself the chosen one with like a 750 OPS. Like,
right? Like, you and your 730 OP, really? At AAA Jacksonville, one of the most convenient right field porches in all of baseball. And
it was. Yeah, not so.
So I have a question. One last question for you guys. You said the group chat was popping off. What was the most out there ranking for you guys on this list?
It was Norby.
The Norby one.
Norby.
Yeah, I mean, it's not in the big scheme of things. It's not a huge difference. Like we think he's a 50. You think he's a 45. It's not the end of the world, but that's certainly the one that jumped out overall. But yeah, I mean,
sure.
Carver, I'm not gonna throw him under the bus, but Carver definitely was blown away by your take on Ramirez sticking that catcher on your article.
I mean, yeah,
that made no sense because Carver was on my side, like against Eli, saying no, they're gonna give him at least a couple of years to figure it out at the big leagues.
But I mean that's expected though, honestly.
Right.
Yeah,
you're trading for the guy knowing he's gonna catch.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too, right? He's the centerpiece in a trade for Chaz Chisholm Jr. If there's scouts,
is he?
He is for sure. I think there you have Baseball Prospectus ranking this guy 33rd in all of baseball, and I mean they're a respectable outlet. I think that's very high, but you think Baseball Prospectus is ranking him that high if they don't think he can catch? Like again, I hear everything. I'm seeing what you're seeing too. But there's a lot of people I really respect, even in third-party organizations. I ran it by a couple. Even I ran it by one of my buddies who was a professional catcher who works in a front office, and he thinks that he's going to be able to catch. So everyone that knows more about catching than I do, because that's not one of my strongest suits, feels very confident in that. And so like I'm just going to play the percentages there and run with it. And from what I've seen, I think it's been fine enough. I have a lot of faith that this offseason – he's gonna really kick it in gear. And again, like this dude was catching complex pitchers 170 games ago, and he hasn't caught all those games either, right? Like so, you got to really think about the limited reps here. And now he's gonna have, for the first time in his professional career, full-fledged focus on only him. Like the Marlins' vested interest is his development as a catcher. If he looked like Moises Ballesteros back there and couldn't move, I'd be concerned. It's just more of I don't think he fully knows what he needs to do at this point, and I think it'll come along. But yeah, I mean he's 22. That's the other thing too. So I'm excited to see. Maybe it doesn't totally come along, but I mean EVs like that and the offensive profile also is another reason why I think even if he's catching part time, he's not such a disaster that he can't be that like Mitch Garver type worst case scenario. So that's why I like the range of outcomes as well.
Yep. All right. So Rodri Munoz is on the mound. Ali Sanchez behind the plates. That means it's time for Marlins baseball. Before that, we need to go into prediction time really quickly before the series begins.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
I thought I was going to get through that a little bit smoother without cracking up. But the first of three between these teams right here. Look at our prediction time leaderboard. Every pick matters down the stretch between our super subs, our staffers, and our stream guests like Savento and like Arm right here. Simply pick how many games the Marlins are going to win and who's going to be the series MVP. Could come from either team. 3-game series this weekend. Let me just get the music queued up. We'll start overall with series production.
Let's say Marlins take 2 out of 3, and Jake Berger will be the series MVP. I really have not paid attention to many Mets things or Marlins, so we'll go with that.
Isaac Azoot, your turn.
Oh man, I think that the Marlins are going to lose 2 out of 3 here, but I do think that Valente Belloso is going to shove again. It's not going to run out yet, not yet. He will be the series MVP.
Okay, Savento, your predictions. Go ahead.
I think the Marlins are going to win all 3. I hate the Mets. Xavier Edwards is going to collect at least 6 hits and he'll be the MVP.
Aram, let's hear it.
I think the Mets take 2 out of 3 in this one. I think Belloso gets teed off on, unfortunately. And I think Mark Vientos is going to be the series MVP. That guy just can swing.
Yeah, he always crushes the Marlins too.
South Florida kid.
Yeah, stud.
So to take us home, I am going with an upset right here. Marlins winning 2 out of 3 in New York. Picking a guy, we've looked at it, 40 series predictions that we've done, 40 sets of them. Nobody has gone with Calvin Fauché as a series MVP. He's picking high leverage innings for Marlins. If they're going to win 2 out of 3, I think they're going to be tight wins, and he'll need to be on the mound. Plenty well rested heading into the series. I think Calvin Fauché dubs a couple of clean innings, and that's enough to make the difference right here. Upset win in Queens.
You know, it's bad when David Hensley's in the lineup tonight, guys.
This is going to be really ugly, boys, until September. But before we end it, just one last question for Aram. Once he's officially a Marlin, where does Andrew Salas rank on your list?
Andrew Salas. Oh man, I gotta watch more of that kid. I don't know. I'm excited to dive in more. To be honest, I have not seen much at all.
You have a lot of video.
I'm excited, to be honest. I haven't dug in, but I'd imagine pretty high, considering how highly regarded he continues to sound. I just have not even delved into that, but that is exciting for the Marlins. They need to hit on a international free agent. Like Kova, Young has plenty of time, but it has not looked nearly as good as I think they were hoping out of the gate. So it's exciting. I'll get back to you on that one because
they have him. They could have Salas and potentially Ethan Holiday if they get that number 1 pick.
Yeah, and you know how the lottery is going to go for the Marlins. They're getting pick 5.
They're going to get screwed.
They're going to pick 5, and then they're going to do something weird. But no, it would be nice to win that lottery.
Chance to get that number 1 pick.
Yeah. Well, shameless plug. We do have a package. I think the world's largest package of English language. Well, not English language. I should say on an English language YouTube channel. It's on our YouTube channel on our site. About 11 minutes of Andrew Salas highlights from his summer league. This is a 16.
I'm going to go watch.
Yeah, some defense, some hitting, even some base running in there to expedite that evaluation going on. But please follow him, RMLaden8 on Twitter, Savento17 on Twitter. Both of them are awesome. Check out the prospect list, justbaseball.com/prospects. We'll lead you right there if you haven't seen it yourself. But we're going to link to it, of course, on our platforms to make it easy to find. So from Eli, Kevin, Isaac, Savento, Aram, thank you guys for joining us. Enjoy your weekends and go fish.